I want to talk to you about the Form 965C. We're speaking about transfer agreement under 965H3. So here's the approach I want you to pay attention to. So I want you to look right now on the screen here. So this is actually the form transfer agreement under section 965H3. I'm showing you the first part. So when we talk about this form, you have the transferor and the transferee. So part one actually covers the transfer information. So you have to put the name of the eligible transferor, and don't forget that you have to put also the EIN or the social of the transferor. And also, so you do the same thing for part two. So part two actually relates to the transferee. And the cool thing is that we love the fact that this form is pretty transparent in terms of going as granular as possible. And so that's part one and part two. Part three is pretty straightforward too. So here, when we speak about Form 965C, we are actually referring to what the form calls acceleration event. And again, this form is pretty convoluted, so we're not going to go into too much detail here for sake of timing. But if you have any question, if you have any comments about this form, let us know in the comment section, and we'll certainly get back to you with more granularity and more context. Okay. So one thing I want to draw your attention to line 3 of part 3. So here you have to provide a detailed description of the acceleration events, be as granular and detailed as possible. And part 4 and part 5 are pretty straightforward. And I want to show you on the screen here part 4. So part 4 here, part 6 rather. Part 6, we are speaking about the terms of the agreement. So basically you are giving you're giving the IRS much information about this form. And the screenshot I want to show you here is the transferor and transferee signature. So don't forget that this form 965C must be signed by the transferee and the transferor in all cases. So long story short, when you think about form 965C, this is actually an essential document for U.S. multinational corporations that find themselves subject to the transition tax under section 965 of the Internal Revenue Code. This was actually part of this came across after we had the TCJA. Okay, and so the purpose of this form is pretty straightforward. Basically, you want to facilitate the transfer of specific payment amounts between related parties to comply with the requirements of section 965. And it's one of those things where it is an ongoing compliance requirements. So make sure that you actually comply with the tax laws under this section. By the way, boss, welcome back to the show. It's really a pleasure to have you here. Make yourself comfortable. You are going to enjoy today's conversation. I want to go a little granular here. So when we talk about the Form 965C, I showed you how the form looks like so you have a clear idea. And let's talk about the components of this form. So let's talk about, I want to talk to you about the identification information, the transfer information, the allocation of liability. So this is an essential criterion when we talk about Form 965C, allocation of liability. And I also want to talk to you about the importance of attachments when it comes to this form. So let's first talk about identification information. So the thing is that when we talk about identification information, we are speaking about a constellation of factors, right? From EIN all the way to your name, to your PTIN in some cases, or to your TIN, to your TIN number. So your taxpayer identification number. If you don't have a social, then you might need to have to provide your TIN. And so when we talk about name, address, TIN, we also are talking about that information for the transferor, but also for the transferee. So it actually works both ways. And when we talk about identification information, we're also talking about the specific type of transfer, whether it is a transfer of stock or property, because it's one of those things where the IRS wants to know if we're speaking about a marketable security or a real property. And when we talk about transfer information, we are speaking about the market value, the fair market value, the FMV of the transferred stock or property, as well as the data and the exchange ratio used for determining the allocation of the section 965A previously taxed earnings and profits. Okay. And when we talk about allocation of liability, we are speaking here about a pretty important criterion, because Form 965C requires the allocation of the Section 965A PTAP liability between the transferor and the transferee. Okay, but the PTAP actually is previously taxed earnings and profits. And the form actually provides a table where the amounts are allocated based on the respective ownership percentages of the transferor and the transferee. And when I talk about attachments, the form 965C may require certain attachments, such as a schedule listing the transferor and transferee's respective ownership percentages and any other additional information required by the IRS. So it's one of those things where, in the interest of being as transparent as possible, you want to provide all information the IRS requires. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about Form 965C. I want to go a little granular, even more granular than before, in terms of talking to you about the benefits of this form, 965C. Okay, you have deferral of transaction tax liability. You have reduced interest charges. You have improved cash flow management in some cases. And I might add, we have also optimization of like fiscal optimization. You have flexibility in meeting obligations, all kinds of obligations. And you have avoidance of penalties, which is something that you really want to have in terms of your IRS focused strategy. Okay, so when I talk about deferral of transaction tax liability, I'm speaking about an important element, because the primary benefits of the Form 965C transfer agreement is basically your ability, or the ability of a taxpayer, to defer the payment of the transaction tax liability. And this allows the taxpayers to pay the liability in installments over a period of 8 years instead of making a lump sum payment. So this gives you, again, room to breathe and room to grow. You also have reduced interest charges. So by entering into the transfer agreement, taxpayers can reduce the interest charges that would typically apply to unpaid tax liabilities. And the interest rate is generally lower than the standard rate that applies to unpaid taxes. And so when we talk about fiscal optimization and or improved cash flow management, we are speaking about an installment payment option that this Form 965C transfer agreement provides. So you are able, as a taxpayer, to manage your cash flow more effectively. So instead of depleting your cash reserves with a large upfront payment, you can spread the tax liability over multiple years. Think about that. 8 years, potentially easing the financial strain that could actually come out if you were to pay everything today. So this is kind of cool in terms of giving you room to grow and room to breathe. Okay. And also, one thing I want to say here is that basically you also have flexibility in meeting obligations, all kinds of obligations, tax obligations, but also other forms of financial obligations. So this is kind of cool. I want to talk to you about eligibility here. So when we talk about Form 965C, I want to talk about those constituencies that are eligible for filing this form. So generally, individuals, corporations, partnerships, trusts, estates, and other entities that are considered U.S. shareholders of specific foreign corporations may be eligible to file Form 965C. So basically, we are speaking about the whole gamut of shareholders, from individuals to companies. Okay. And one thing I want to say here is that it's not about the category you're in. It's about your relationship vis-a-vis that specified foreign corporation. So U.S. shareholders of specified foreign corporations are typically defined as U.S. citizens or residents, domestic corporations, domestic partnerships, domestic estates, and taxes. So when I talk about domestic corporations, domestic partnerships, domestic estates, and trusts, we are speaking about categories that have incorporated in the United States. So if you, it doesn't matter the states where you incorporate, as long as you have incorporated in this country, you are considered a domestic corporation or domestic entity, if you will. Okay. So one thing I want to say here is that eligibility, however, to file Form 965C is actually subject to specific criteria and requirements outlined by the IRS. So it's always better to talk to a qualified tax professional, or just just go to the IRS websites and read more about the agency's instructions regarding 965C, so that you can see whether or not that you are eligible, because you want to determine your eligibility. You also want to understand the specific circumstances that applies to your situation. One thing we can do is we can certainly help you out. So if you have any question, let us know in the comment section, and one of our team members will actually get back to you. So we'll study your question, we'll study your comments, and we'll let you know. Because the thing is that every situation is different. Okay, even if you have a relationship or a correlation, if you have a connection, rather, that's the right word, connection to a specified foreign corporation, there are cases where that connection might not trigger Form 1065C filing, and there are cases where that connection will trigger Form 965C filing. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about Form 965C. I want to talk to you about, I want to go a little detail here in terms of explaining what this form is all about, okay? Form 965C. So the thing is that if you want to want to file this form, you can do it manually, you can do it online, you can do it also via tax software such as TurboTax or H&R Block and so on and so forth. But if you want to do it, if you want to do it manually, obtain the form. First of all, you want to go to the IRS website. Don't download Form 965C or any other tax form for that matter from third-party websites. Go to the source. You always want to go to the source. Go to the IRS's website and download the form from there, okay? And you want to provide general information. So we are speaking about your name, first name, last name, address, and taxpayer identification number. So you really have to identify yourself in all granularity. And the thing is that you have to also talk about the transfer agreement. So we are talking about you providing details about the transfer agreement. Specifically, what you want to do is you want to check the box to indicate whether you are an individual, corporation, partnership, or other entity. Other entity can be a trust or estate. You want to enter the total transaction tax liability as determined under this section 965. You want to indicate the amount of previously paid transaction tax liability. And you want to calculate the remaining balance by subtracting the previously paid amount from the total transaction tax liability. And you want to enter the amount you are requesting to pay immediately and the remaining amount you wish to defer. And the thing is, if you choose to defer payments, you may be required to provide an installment agreement or another form of security. And so this is the part where you talk about the transfer agreement. And so that's part one. Part one is transfer agreement. Part two is actually where you have a statement of understanding. I showed you a little earlier what the statement of understanding really is. So you are able to, you are able to provide certain stipulations. And step 5, you want to actually retain a copy of anything you file with the IRS, especially this Form 965C. Okay, make a copy for your records, you never know. And then you submit. Okay, send the completed Form 965C to the IRS. And now the address will be specified in the instructions. And it's always better, and this is what we have seen time and again, you want to actually use certified mail or a reputable delivery service to ensure proper delivery, okay? And it's important to really understand that you want to be on the right side of the law, so you always want to make sure that you're safe, so you want to keep a copy for your records. I want to talk to you a little bit about the deadline. So when we talk about this form here, I want to talk about filing deadlines and extensions. So the deadlines, it's the same thing as the Form 1040. So April 15th, okay? And so April 15 or 16 or 17, depending on whether or not April 15 is a holiday or it's a weekend, Saturday or Sunday, okay? And so pretty straightforward. Now, the thing is that Form 965C, you can actually extend it. There is an extension format for individuals and extension formats for partnerships, and S corporations. It really depends upon your category. So for individuals, you have automatic extension from April 15th all the way through October 15th. And you actually get that by filing Form 4868. So the form is a 4868. And so this form grants you automatic extension of time to file U.S. individual income tax return. That's for individuals. Now, if you have a partnership or or corporation, you also have the ability to extend. So basically, you have to file Form 7004. And so you can request an extension that way. Now, this form extends the filing deadline by 6 months also, moving it from the original deadline to September 15th. One thing I need to say here is that if you get an extension, you are able to have additional time to file your tax return, but you do not receive an extension when it comes to payment deadline. So tax liabilities are still generally due by the original deadline, April 15th for individuals, March 15th for partnerships and S corporations. So even if an extension is filed, you still have to pay your taxes by the due date. So don't forget that. This is one of those things where a lot of folks are just getting it wrong, and they think that they can just file an extension and they can get 6 months to make payments. No, if you wait for 6 months to make payments, you are going to incur taxes. You are going to incur fees, penalties, interest, and so on and so forth. So the tax liability just goes up and up and up and up. If you have problems paying your tax liabilities, it's always better to contact the IRS to see if you can have an agreement. Okay, you have all kinds of agreements. You can have an offer and compromise. You can have an installment agreement. You can have a lot of things, but basically, it's always better to communicate. Be proactive. Don't wait till the last minute to actually say, "Yo, hey, listen, IRS, I have a problem. I have a problem paying my taxes." No, you want to be as proactive as possible. Before I close to this conversation, I want to talk to you about a few mistakes that you need to avoid while filing Form 965C. And this form is, as you can see, the form is actually convoluted. The form is a pretty complex, but also provides a level of transparency to the IRS. And the agency has it. The agency wants that transparency to be able to process your taxes. Okay, and so there are a few things you need to avoid. First of all, incorrect calculations. So ensure that all calculations on this form are accurate. Double check your numbers, including the amounts of accumulated foreign earnings, tax liability, and any adjustments or deductions. And also missing or incorrect information. So provide all the required information on the form, such as the taxpayer's identification number, the specified foreign corporation's detail, and the correct tax year. Make sure to enter accurate and up-to-date information to avoid delays or errors. It's one of those things where it's just a lot better to file this form electronically as opposed to filing it manually. And so also make sure you attach the proper schedules, because the Form 965C may actually require additional schedules to be attached depending upon the complexity of your situation. Every situation is different. So for example, you might have Schedule E, Schedule P, or Schedule S. So review the instructions carefully and attach the required schedules when applicable. And you also want to comply with the reporting requirements. And we are speaking here about you actually providing as much information as possible. And please comply with the deadlines. Ensure that you file this form by the appropriate deadline I told you a little earlier, because otherwise you are exposing yourself to penalties and interest charges. And you also want to have a complete and consistent documentation. So maintain proper documentation to support the information reported on Form 965C. So I'm speaking here about what? Records of accumulated foreign earnings, calculations, and any adjustments or deductions. So because incomplete or inconsistent documentation can lead to questions or challenges from tax authorities, including the IRS. You do not want to have that. And but bottom line here is that if everything I'm telling you is a little, let's say, too complex for you, it's just always better to contact a professional. You want to contact a professional who really understands what you are going through. So this can be a CPA, an enrolled agent, or a tax attorney, or even a non-accredited professional who has experience can also help you in some cases. Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. Let's quickly do a recap here. In today's conversation, I spoke to you about the Form 965C. So I gave you the approach and now the recap. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.